Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining the Boardroom Club today to our innovation conference, featuring executives from top tech companies across AI, analytics, cyber, fintech, quantum computing, CRM, and whatnot. My name is Yossi Garmazi. I'm a second-year MBA here at Cornell, and I'm joined here by a classmate and a very good friend of mine, Alvaro Jimenez. Alvaro?
Happy to be here, Yossi.
Yeah, so today we are fortunate enough to interview none other than Ira Robbins, the chairman and CEO of VLY Bank. Ira's journey is incredible as he's done all the way up from answering an ad in the classified magazine to the management associates program to eventually leading the bank as the CEO for the last 7 years, shaping the bank's future and reaching new heights. Just to clear your thoughts, under his leadership, VLY Bank has grown from $20 billion in total assets to more than $60 billion, with only about 350 additional employees at the same time frame. But we'll get to it later on. So, Ira, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So, Ira, I thought to start by asking you, first of all, about your academic journey. After all, we are MBAs. And you started at the beginning as a history major, which is maybe not the typical path to finance. So I was just wondering what led you to the financial world at the end.
I think I learned for the beginning of my college career that there's certain things that are hobbies in life that you enjoy and other things that are more from a profession perspective, and separating the hobby from the profession was sort of the distinction with where I went from history. I always loved numbers, and I found the ability to sort of think through from an analytical perspective to be something that was sort of inbred and ingrained into who I was as a person. So finance and economics seemed like a much better approach as I thought about a career versus more of a desire from things I like from a hobby perspective, which was history.
Yeah, and before we maybe going to deep dive into the banking world, since you have started as a history major, if you have to choose one historical figure to have a coffee with, who would it be and why?
Top of mind for me is Martin Luther King. Actually, I'm on my way to Alabama next week to visit some of our branches, and I'm going to spend some time going through some of the museums and sort of seeing what his life looked like. But I think that the challenges that he went through, I think, were very difficult. And we look at history with the perspective of status quo and understanding what somebody's life and experiences were like based on that environment. The environment was very different for him. And to be able to stand up and do what he did was very remarkable. And he's a huge inspiration for a lot of people, and probably one of my heroes.
Yeah, actually ours as well. Although I'm an Israeli, I know Martin Luther King and super inspirational guy. And basically you began your journey at VLY Bank by applying to just a credit position, but ended up at the management training program. Can you walk us through maybe about the experience and how it shaped your career?
It was very fortunate. My mom wanted me to live close at home, so she would send me newspaper clippings every single week when I was in college. And she would circle on those newspaper clippings in yellow highlighter different jobs that she thought would be appropriate for me. Lo and behold, VLY was one of them. I thought that she had known someone at VLY. In reality, she just wanted me to be geographically close to home. So I applied, sent a cover sheet and said, my mom suggests I apply here. Why VLY responded is beyond me, but I think it's been great. So I drove out for a credit analyst position. When I got here for the interview, they said, we think it maybe fit more in the management associate program, which at the time was a 21 different department journey that I got to go through over an 18-month, 2-year period. That really aligned my interests with the interests of the bank and gave me some experience and exposure into what the world of banking was like. I loved it, and almost 30 years later, I have definitely found a home here.
Yeah, absolutely. And VLY Bank also started, as you might aware of, is a local community bank, but has grown significantly while maintaining its relationship focused approach. Which is not so easy thing to do, because at the end, if you grow so much, you kind of like lose some of your mentality. But as mentioned, VLY Bank was able to do it. So how has the bank evolved and grown to what we're seeing today, but still kept its mentality and its tight-knit community?
I would say, culture is really important, and I think there's two definitions of culture. I would say one, there's a culture of beliefs, which would imply what are your values, what are your ethics, some of those individual things that are ingrained into who you are as a person. I think those are things that can never change or should never change within an organization. Then outside of cultural beliefs, there's cultural behaviors, right? And I think cultural behaviors are probably a little bit different. How do you think about accountability, ownership within an organization? And those behaviors evolve and grow as organizations change. I think many organizations run through a maturity curve, and that maturity curve evolves and changes as the companies grow as well. So the leaders that you have in place, the cultural behaviors that you have in place might be appropriate for one point along that journey. But as the company matures and gets to a different level of maturity, those cultural behaviors probably need to evolve as well as what the leadership team looks like across the organization. And I think the ability to continue to evolve those cultural behaviors as well as the leadership across the organization has made Valley a successful organization for nearly 100 years.
Yeah, it's super insightful, and indeed, it's amazing to see it from the outside how you kept your mentality going on. And you've been with ValueBank for I think over 20 years by now. What led you to stay rather than maybe explore other opportunity? Is I'm sure there was a bunch of others, specifically in New York City, Wall Street, and such.
Yeah. So I think it was grounded in back to my original comment about the culture, right? So having the right culture beliefs, which was something that was aligned with me. So I read a lot of Simon Sinek and how you think about aligning your own personal why, which I think is very important within an organization. So for me, the personal why was aligned with how I thought about cultural beliefs and making sure they were the same values, ethics, how we thought about the community and all of our stakeholders. So that was consistent with who I was. I think one of the things that Simon Sinek doesn't talk about so much when he talks about the individual why are the belonging piece that comes with it. And Valley's always made a strong connection to me, a strong connection to our clients, the communities, the associates we serve, but have a real sense of belonging within the organization. Valley really made me feel like this was a home, not in the sense where you get that familiar approach when it comes to everything, but really a place that I could sort of grow and prosper as more of what that home looked like from a maturity perspective. And for me, they gave me opportunity to do things that I would never had the opportunity to do at other organizations, still being challenged. I mean, did my first M&A deal when I was 24, 25 years old. With definitely guidance as we went about doing it, but I was definitely empowered to do something like that. So I think when I look at my background and the areas that I've been exposed to have been tremendous from a foundation perspective, which is the beauty of really starting at an organization that cares about you and has a size like what we have and really wanted to grow. That growth mindset that Valley always had was connected to who I am. And I think that's really important to align a growth mindset within who you are and the organization that you work for. So that connectivity, I think, was really important.
Amazing to hear about it. And Ira, obviously, you're a successful CEO, and we have a lot of young professionals out there that watching our episodes here. What are maybe some of the most valuable attributes that contributed to your success as CEO of ValueBank, and even before that, leading to essentially be CEO at the end of the day?
I think there's things that are just embedded in me from a work ethic perspective. I got my first job when I was 11 years old. I haven't stopped working since then. So having a real strong work ethic, I think, is important. I have a curiosity, a significant desire to learn and grow, and I'm open to feedback from all sorts of individuals. But I think that desire from a growth mindset, from a curiosity, a strong work ethic, I think being humble in who I am as a person as well leads me to learn and grow every single day. And I think that is aligned with what a CEO should be, right? Growth is what CEOs should be looking at, whether that's growth in size, growth in revenue, growth in profitability, growth in known development, and what even a product offering looks like. But that desire to grow and wanting to continuously be better than we were the day before is something that's really strong and innate in who I am. And I think that those characteristics really align with what a CEO should have as well.
Yeah, and our main theme of this conference is innovation. And you spoke also about growth. And ValueBank has grown under your leadership from 20 billion, as I mentioned at the intro, to more than $60 billion in total assets in just a few years, while only about, I think, 350 additional employee added at this time frame. How have you managed such a rapid expansion while maintaining innovation at the same time frame?
I think it's from a leadership perspective, the people that we've been able to bring into the organization that have an understanding that innovation is important. Innovation really is aligned with the growth mindset, where people have the ability to continue to evolve and change. And I like to say, put their own thumbprint on what the future of the organization is going to look like. And when you trust and empower people to leave their thumbprint on what the future of the organization is going to look like, inevitably it's going to look different than what it did before. So as you mentioned, we've tripled the organization size. It only expanded 350 employees. We're around 4,000 employees today. The benefit of that was really embedding innovation. A lot of the processes that we looked at things as to how we sort of had end-to-end journeys from a client perspective and from an employee perspective. So being able to leverage technology is something that was important to me as to how we thought about providing people value add as to what they wanted to do. I once heard somebody talk about how they thought about, work-life balance. And the conversation is how much time should I be spending and focused on what my life is versus what my work is. And she really switched the conversation and said, how do I think about work a little bit differently, but take the things from a work perspective that I don't enjoy, right, that are mundane and process oriented, and really evolve them into something that is challenging growth and how I think about getting satisfaction from my job. If you take out the mundane things, which are largely automated, I would think, and really provide people opportunities to, once again, leave their thumbprint on something impactful, then you've provided more joy out of what they're doing from a job perspective. And I think as we continue to try to drive that throughout the organization, you naturally have more innovation come to who you are and really drive that future for you.
You also mentioned the technology innovation, so I have a follow-up on this one. We obviously now, me and Alvaro are in the fintech intensive here at Cornell Tech, so we would love to hear your thoughts on the emerging fintech technology like blockchain. Where do you see it's going, let's say, in the next few years?
I think innovation is going to continue to reshape what our industry looks like, and not just our industry, but the entire economy, which is a positive. Productivity continues to expand at record levels, and people have the ability to really have an exponential impact on something versus what it was before. When I first started as CEO, one of the first things we did was we created a venture fund called VLY Ventures. I went to the board and I asked for $100 million investment into the fund. And it wasn't just so much the ability to drive investment returns for us. It was really a focus on how do we think about driving an innovative culture within the organization. We were forward thinking that some of the things that people would have thought that were sort of culturally non-starters within the organization were now going to be different. So that begins the shift as to how you think about what innovation looks like, really empowering your associates to begin to iterate and innovate across the organization. We then were very disciplined of what VLY Ventures was going to be and how do we think about strategic fits within some of the investment portfolio companies that we looked at, and really can we leverage some of them to have an outside-in view as to who VLY was, and then inside out in developing some of their individual technologies and what MVPs look like as well for them. So it's been a wonderful success. I think we're sitting well over 20 portfolio companies today, but there's been obviously solid financial returns, but I think more so internally, there's been a lot of growth and innovation within the entire VLY ecosystem, which has been really what the expectation was when we made that $100 million investment.
Yeah, and you also had the relatively recent merger with Bank Leumi as an Israeli. I have to ask about it, right?
Sure.
And yeah, and so there has been significant traction from the Israeli tech community toward VLY Bank. And as a CEO, how do you ensure success of such a merger while navigating all the challenges and maybe even post-integration?
In banking and probably in most companies, mergers are never putting one product with another product or one geography with another geography. It's the merging of people, right? And how do you get people to interact together? So I think being highly focused on the human element of what an M&A deal looks like becomes critical to what that success is. There were so many strategic levers and fits within Bank Leumi USA that really fit with us. that were complementary to our businesses, that provided some synergies for what growth looked like. I think the real challenge in any M&A deal is really how do you begin to win the hearts and minds of those that you've acquired. Remember, they didn't make a choice to come to you, you made a choice to acquire them. So I think when you spend time really focus on the people of any M&A deal and focus on winning their hearts and minds, as if they did choose to come to you and weren't told to come to you, to me, that's what success looks like in any acquisition. And I think we've been very successful in retaining, growing clients out of it, expanding many of those business lines that were important to us and provide the rationale for why we wanted to do that specific deal.
And also you're highly engaged, attending conference like Mind the Tech in New York City. I mean, I saw you there on the stage, and even the Consumer Bank Association in Orlando, as well as meeting clients over dinner. So what drives you to remain so active and persistent despite, I mean, you're already a CEO, so yeah.
I think it goes back to the couple things that you asked earlier, like what really makes a successful CEO. And the first two things I said were work ethic and curiosity, right? I have a desire to work and to grow, and I have a curiosity to learn more than anything else. So I think it's great being in front of individuals, whether it was at the CBA conference that you mentioned or at the Mind the Tech conference. But I'm there just as much to learn as I am there to present, right? So when I have an open ear and have the ability to interact and engage with people that I would have maybe not had the normal interaction with on a day-to-day basis, I think that's a huge, wonderful opportunity for me. The evening before I did the CBA conference, we had a dinner with a lot of our clients down in Orlando, and being able just to listen to them and talk about their businesses and what made them successful. I find in many of these situations, I do a lot more listening than talking. And to me, that's really the benefit of going to so much of this stuff.
And last question for myself before we moving on to Alvaro. Actually, one of my most favorite ones is that what is your unexpected place where you gain the clients, perhaps even an event or on the subway or maybe even in the supermarket?
Where have I gained a client from?
Yeah, the most bizarre one.
Probably something with my kids, to be honest with you, and their interaction with something and bumping into someone at an industry or at a soccer game or something like that is probably something that's probably been a bit more surprising to me. Nothing that I was expecting. I think for an organization like Valley, we are a regional bank, but we're community in nature. Right. So being embedded in your community is really the value proposition that we have. We tell that to all of our associates, whether they work internally or externally. So being active in your community is really important to what the growth of our organization is. So as much time as I can spend in the community, there's bound to be stories that are weird, I guess, as to sort of how we got customers. But that's the whole part of what our business model looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And amazing to hear it. And Ira, I learned a lot from you, and I have a bunch of other questions, but maybe in another time. Alvaro has also a great question to ask you. So Alvaro, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Yossi. So, Ira, we've talked a lot about the culture and Valley Bank, what you like about it, what has made you stay. But I'm sure not everything went well along those years. And one of the things that we've talked with some of our interviewees is about the crisis during COVID. So you took over as CEO right before COVID. And can you tell us a little bit about what were the biggest challenges serving local communities during that time?
I think COVID was extremely challenging, and we could think about it from serving a community, from liquidity, from funding. But in reality, the thing that made COVID challenging was there was a fear, right? And a fear component and a human element. And fear drives outcomes sometimes that always aren't necessarily rational and drives behaviors that really require a different approach as to how you think about what your way forward is going to look like. I've been in crisis before, like in the great financial crisis back in 2008, 2009, there was a liquidity problem. So if there's a liquidity problem, there's solutions and behaviors and paths you can go down to really mitigate what that potential risk is. When there's a human catastrophe like there was when it comes to a pandemic, people just don't need a way forward as to how they think about their business, as to how they think about getting funding or what their bank looks like. There's a human element to it. And I think that became the real biggest challenge associated with the pandemic. It wasn't just dealing with some of the normal financial issues that needed to be addressed and how we help people get through that crisis. but it was the component of fear that people were dealing with and the sense of belonging, as I mentioned earlier. People just needed the sense of belonging once again. So we were very focused on how we connected with the community. I think the results speak for themselves. We had, even in the state of Florida, I think, which was not our primary location, if you look at the size of market share we had versus the number of loans that we did, we were the #1 bank in the entire state, and that's compared against Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, even the local banks that are headquartered there, Seacoast, Bank United. Our associates had the biggest impact in that state on a relative basis versus any other financial institution, and that's a function of the care that all of us felt right for the communities. We live in these communities. The success was important for these communities. And that's the business model that we have. And that's why banks like us are really important and critical for the growth of our country.
See that the culture not only is to the employees and inside, but also what you project outside, which is what's so important for the communities. And that's really great to hear. And a good segue to my next question, which is about work-life balance, because a lot of things changed during COVID, and then suddenly we had work from home, and then now it seems that some of the bigger companies are turning back on that. So you've spoken about time allocation between work and family, but how do you personally ensure that there's a balance between work, family, rest, and what advice would you give others?
I think if you find a passion of yours from a work perspective, then work-life balance becomes really, really easy because you win on both sides. For me, it isn't so much about sort of segregating how much is work and how much is personal, but how do you think about integrating your whole life together, right? I like to say you just don't show up in the office and not think about your kids, not think about your spouse or whatever else is going on in your life. Those do have impacts on how you show up. And conversely, even in your personal life, as much as you try to segregate and say this is a work issue, I'm not going to be focused on it, it does have an impact on it. So I think it's not so much thinking about how you separate and not have them interact, but how do you function when they do interact together, and make sure part of that is if you have a passion and enjoy what you do from a professional perspective, then I think work-life balance becomes very, very easy.
Agreed. That's a very good point. And moving on then to a little bit about the future and what it is that your vision is. We see that Valley Bank is expanding beyond New Jersey, strong presence in Florida, which you just mentioned. But what would you say is your vision for the next decade?
I think relevancy is what's top of mind, right? And I think we have multiple stakeholders, and I think all of it inures to the benefit of our shareholder, which is sort of the reason that we do exist. But look, we have communities, clients, and associates. So when I think about what the future is, I think, how do I think about it for those three individual stakeholders? So I think from the communities, how do we think about the communities we serve? And I wouldn't just say that they're geographical communities, right? One of the things in merging with Blusa, with Bank Leumi USA, was thinking about a technology vertical, right? And how do we think about that? Now, that's just not a geography. You know, Sharon deals with who we have in the New York East Coast. Adrian deals with who we deal with in the West Coast. And there's a whole litany of other players in there, but it's one ecosystem. So to me, it's how we relevant to that ecosystem, irrespective of where the geography is from a client perspective. Those are the communities that we're serving. There are definitely geography focused types of communities, but relevancy within those communities becomes important to us. From a client perspective, it's what is Valley providing to that individual client that it's helping him or her achieve their professional ambitions. So making sure we have table stakes, but we're also providing that value add, which usually is a relationship, and thinking about how we support the growth of that individual client. And from an associate perspective, if we're not driving professional ambition and outcome and a real desire to want to be here, and where someone's feeling like there's professional growth, then we're not going to have the best associates. And in reality, that's what it comes down to. If we don't have the best associates working for us, then the client experiences aren't going to be good, and the relevancy to the communities aren't going to be as important as they are. So I have a finance and economics degree. I have an MBA in finance. I have a CPA with a focus on accounting, numbers, and everything else. The most important thing I do, though, is from a culture and employee perspective, and make sure that we are driving behaviors and outcomes that are consistent with who we are from a culture beliefs perspective, and drive relevancy for all of our stakeholders.
Convince me, I'm a follower, but from this success that clearly is happening for you in the bank, I have a question, which is that you became one of the youngest CEOs in the country, and what do you think contributed to your success at such an early stage of your career?
I think a lot of it has to do with the environment and situation that I was in. When I made a decision to go work for Valley when I was 22 years old, 21 years old, I took a job for $25,000 versus a job that was offering me $60,000, $70,000 at that time. Being able to put myself in this position to align on making sure I had the right mentorship, to be always open to grow, were positions that I put in myself. It worked out fortunate for me that it was the right organization for me to be involved with that provided me what that opportunity was. But it was also me having a focus on what my long-term career ambition was, and it wasn't just saying I'm going to take the most money today because that's going to give me the life or what I was expecting to have at that moment in time. To me, you sort of desire and identify what you want in the future, and then work your way backwards. And that led me to Valley, and it's been a very fortuitous opportunity for me, and hopefully beneficial to everyone that's been involved with Valley as well.
I agree completely, not sacrificing the long term for a short term. You mentioned it right now, mentorship. There must have been someone, and I think in the past you've mentioned Jerry Lipkin as an important mentor in your career. What valuable lesson have you learned from him?
There's a lot that came with Jerry. Jerry always said, if someone asks you to sharpen your pencil, just ask how sharp that you wanted that pencil to be, right? And I think that sort of taught me in the end that you may not have to have an understanding of why you're doing something, but if you trust in that individual, then it's the right thing for you to do. And that work ethic becomes really important. I think some of the challenges is people come into a job thinking that they know what the job is, that they know what their career journey is going to look like, and they're very close-minded. If you really trust those that are mentoring you, then you'd be much more open-minded to sort of follow what their path is and what that journey is. Most people want to support you and see you grow. That really is what their legacy looks like as well. So when you align with the right people and you trust the right people, then you really have an opportunity to really exceed expectations. But it wasn't just Jerry. There was a gentleman here by the name of Alan Eska, who was our CFO. There's been a lot of people, and not even in Valley, external people as well from other companies. Networking was really important to me, and being able to interact and connect with so many people, I think, have definitely helped mold and shape who I am today.
All right, and now for the last part of the interview. You know that most of the people who listen into this podcast are students, young professionals, entrepreneurs. Is there any particular advice you have for entrepreneurs?
Just be a sponge. I think a lot of times you feel like you have a vision and you know exactly what to do. And I think being beholden to that is great, but there's a lot that you can learn along the way. And interacting with as many people, even outside of the areas that you think that you're focused on, really have ancillary benefits to you. So being a sponge and never giving up are probably the two things that I would say to you.
All right, and aside from work, you must have some hobbies, something that you do for fun. What would that be?
I have four kids, so they take up most of my time, which is wonderful. And I try to be present with them as often as I'm with them. So, as much as I would love to say I have a hobby where I play golf, I don't. As much as I would love to say I have a hobby where I play tennis or something else, I really don't do a lot of that. To me, I'm very focused on what's important to me, and I prioritize my work, my family, and those really what occupy a lot of my time, and I get tremendous joy and happiness from that.
All right, and I understand, but you must have a favorite movie, favorite book, anyone that you would recommend?
So I don't really watch movies, which will drive people crazy. I'm not sure the last one I even saw. When it comes to TV, I really don't watch TV. I watch History or Science Channel. I do read a lot. I think probably one of the most recent books I read is The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. I thought was a really interesting book as to how I think about living my life and how I want to live my life. So that would probably be one that I would recommend to you.
All right, and one last question would be, if you had not taken this career path, which clearly was so great for you and for the bank, if you could do anything else, if you could go back, what would it be?
I mean, if I was a little bit taller, a little bit more stout from a muscular perspective, I would have been a baseball player. Would have been an ideal career path for me. I'm a huge Baltimore Orioles fan, so I try to follow them as best I can. The numbers, the statistics around baseball is really interesting. But that was never going to happen based on genetics, unfortunately, or even skill set as well. So that would have been an amazing journey for me, though.
Oh, now we have a great movie from Brad Pitt that we can take a look and then say, oh, it would have been nice. Thank you so much, Ira. It's been great. Yossi, back to you.
Yes, so Ira, thank you so much for joining us today. And I can tell you that actually one of my most favorite movies of all time is Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. And they speaking all about bringing statistic into baseball, making the best baseball team that could have been done possible with their funding. So I recommend it. And yeah, Ira, we learned so much from you, and we are appreciate you and trusting us with your time. And I'm sure this knowledge that you shared with us will be super insightful. And for everybody else in the audience, stay tuned. We have amazing lineup of speakers from tech companies that are going to share with us their knowledge as well. From Sierra, Island, Redis, NVIDIA, Zoom, AppsFlyer, and a bunch of other cool, fascinating companies. And yeah, Ira, thank you very much again, and see you soon.